No one wants to walk into the room thinking, I'm not very clever and I don't know what's going on. We like to try and think ahead. And if we see any evidence that our expectation was correct, we give ourselves a mental pat on the back and think we're very smart. However, if I adopt a growth mindset, I'm much more open, much more collaborative. I'm willing to explore options. That really does change the dynamic. And if we go in with that right mindset, it drives tone, it affects our body language, it affects how we interpret theirs, and the ability to find common ground. And all of these things dramatically impact success in sales conversations.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. David, thank you ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
I am delighted to join you. Thank you for having me. What a treat this is. Let's try and keep it under 5 hours.
That would be a good thing. Or we could do 10 episodes of half an hour. That'd be even better.
Absolutely. It's a drip campaign.
It's a drip campaign. Perfect. I'll put it in the funnel. So before the listeners switch off and go, what on earth are they talking about? David, who are you? What do you do? And a memorable song and why.
Well, Mike, delighted to join you. My name's David Meade. My primary career was always as an academic and a researcher. I looked at the science and psychology of high-performing teams, organizations, and individuals. What are the small changes that we can make and take every day to help move the needle on the results that we get? Things like mindset, motivation, persuasion, influence, simple stuff that we can actually apply and employ every day. Today, most of my work is traveling around the world, delivering keynotes. I'm on about 150 stages a year, working with companies like Apple and Meta. I know, and I am offsetting the flights, I promise you. I realize that the offsetting, it's not cool either, but I am doing it, I promise.
Get that. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So my job is to teach organizations the science about how do you actually apply this so you can make it useful. So I take the science and I make it really engaging and fun. And my song would be, it might seem like a bit of an off-the-wall choice, Dario G. Sunshine. It reminds me of maybe my favorite summer of all time. And I realize as a 43-year-old man, having Dario G in my playlist is deeply embarrassing. And this has already been a career-limiting conversation.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Out of interest, why was it? Because we connect songs with experiences. They bring back memories. Why does it evoke a kind of a memory? Why is the song connected to a memory?
It was that summer when I suddenly realized, oh, hold on, I can make decisions, have a personality, do my own thing, design my own day. Whereas I think previous to that, I always felt like your parents were your management and your leadership team. You waited for them to dictate the strategy to you. Then all of a sudden I realized that, hold on, I'm my own department here. I can do things. So I felt that autonomy. So I made new friends, went to new places, got some terrible new haircuts. It was a heck of a summer.
Oh, maybe on the social asset, I ask you for a headshot, you could send some of the terrible haircuts. That would be a lot of fun.
Oh,
I'll leave
David
that one
Beckham,
with you.
It is not, but it's worth a shot.
I'll leave that with you. Anyway, let's move on to the questions, David. Let's start with people buy from people. Yeah, really? Is that true or is it a myth?
We've heard this phrase for years, and lots of people ask me, is there actually a science behind it? And the truth is, there's some amazing pieces of research done. One researcher called Janice Nadler, they looked at a brief rapport building chat happening just before an email negotiation. And the setting was really fascinating. They deliberately made sure that the negotiation happened exclusively over email because it means that you can't get bought into the attractiveness of the person, the tastiness of the coffee, or how good the room looks. So here's how it worked. Rapport building chat was carried out before an email negotiation, and it was designed to raise trust, to improve social and economic outcomes, and the results were absolutely astonishing. What they found was the longer that rapport building occurred, the longer that its duration was, the more likely it was to come to a successful conclusion and dramatically decrease the likelihood of an impasse or a failed negotiation. In fact, if they really got to the root of the things that they connected on, if they found similarity and common ground, whether that's where they're from, sports teams, destinations that they like to visit, hobbies, if they found that, then an impasse or a failed negotiation was about 4 times less likely to happen. And the godfather of all of this stuff, Robert Cialdini, has looked at this as well. He did some separate research into pairs of individuals who, first of all, exchange some personal information and identified a shared interest of some sort. In that case, if the negotiation starts by finding some commonality, the research shows that 90% of them reach agreement and deals that are 18% financially better for both sides. So the research really does bear this out. One other really simple one by a guy called Gregory Neidert. He did a case study in a very famous Fortune 100 company who we're not allowed to name, but they found that the absolute basics of a powerful sale. So in other words, arriving early, researching common interests, looking at the mission, vision, and values of the company, and spending a couple of minutes on personal connection. Not only did that just help connection, but it sped negotiations by about 30%. So the deals were closed faster, but it also saved somewhere between $10 to $30 million. So the results of this are massive.
Wow. So I've never heard the evidence base before. As you say, we all talk about it. So even if I'm right, just summarizing back, even if that relationship building is not done in person, face to face, if it's done via email, if it's done correctly and done well, it has a material impact on the negotiated outcome.
Absolutely. The negotiation will happen faster and better economic outcomes for both parties. And the reason the researchers used email is that is the worst place to negotiate anything. I think we know that. So Imagine how much more powerful that can be if you're face to face. And I'm not even talking about a pitch. I'm talking about the moments before the pitch happens.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's move on to the next question. So with your background in psychology, let's talk broadly about mindset. So why does mindset have such a big impact on the way that we interact in sales and negotiation situations? First of all, can you just describe mindset in your terms and then answer the exam question?
Absolutely, yeah. And show your work. I promise I'll show my work. For me, this really does knock my socks off. For about 15 years, everyone has been using this term growth mindset. Very few people really apply it to the real world. Fundamentally, the growth mindset suggests that it doesn't matter what challenge or opportunity lands in front of you, people with a growth mindset choose to run towards it. Now, a lot of people think incorrectly that people with a fixed mindset are negatives. They're the Eeyores from Winnie the Pooh. No matter how good the day is, they find a problem with it. And that's really unfair. It's not true. People with fixed mindsets believe that they are good at A, B, C, but they're not great at X, Y, Z. So they tend to quite reasonably focus on the things that they're good at. So
yes.
How do we actually use mindset? Well, look, the answer is simple. In sales and negotiation, the mindset that we carry into the room fundamentally shapes the outcomes that we walk out with. The research proves that mindset acts like a lens. It influences how we interpret signals, how confident we appear, and even how much we build trust. So if I enter a negotiation with, let's say, a fixed mindset, if I convince myself that this lead or prospect is a tire kicker, that they don't have enough budget for my solution, or they're already tied to that competitor, then I'll only look for the signals that confirm that preconceived expectations. However, if I go
So is this confirmation bias, David, just out of interest?
Absolutely. We're ticking that mental box because we've convinced ourselves that we're already wasting our times and that success or failure is already predestined.
So we're seeking affirmation that our theory is correct, and then we say, see, I told you so.
Exactly. And you know what? That's natural because it makes us feel good. No one wants to walk into the room thinking, I'm not very clever and I don't know what's going on. We like to try and think ahead. And if we see any evidence that our expectation was correct, we give ourselves a mental pat on the back and think we're very smart. However, if I adopt a growth mindset, I'm much more open, much more collaborative. I'm willing to explore options. That really does change the dynamic. And if we go in with that right mindset, it drives tone, it affects our body language, it affects how we interpret theirs, and the ability to find common ground. And all of these things dramatically impact success in sales conversations.
So, how do we bring that to life with an example, David?
For me, one of my favorite pieces of research on how we use mindset to affect how we show up in a sales negotiation or conversation involves a piece of research around the pratfall effect. Now, it's not a bad word, I promise you. This is what the researchers called it. And a researcher called Elliot Aronson, he showed individuals a video of a really successful, competent person being interviewed and asking some questions. Now, in one version of that video shown to participants, the person aced all of the questions and seemed flawless. However, in the other version, everything was exactly the same, except they edited out a short clip from the same moment where this participant accidentally spilled a cup of coffee on himself. Now, the only difference was this tiny blunder, and yet it made participants rate him as dramatically more likable and relatable. So I want you to think about this in the context of sales and negotiation. We are constantly telling ourselves, Mike, that we've got to be the A player, our solution has got to be the best, we've got to be the most experienced. But if we do that, the person sitting across the table or on the other side of the Zoom room has convinced themselves that, well, look, it can't be this good. There's no way it's this perfect. I smell a rat.
Exactly.
So the minute that we're only talking about why we're world-class, perfect, or flawless, people start to doubt the credibility of the offer. It feels too good to be true. But when you balance competence with a touch of vulnerability or realism, if you acknowledge a limitation either in you or your product or your solution, then it signals authenticity. Now, lots of people will be saying, well, hold on, I don't want to talk about a flaw of our product. You don't need to, but you can convey something that creates that sense of authenticity. A good example is you can have a world-class solution, but perhaps manage the client, lead, and prospect's expectation by telling them, hey, timelines will be a little tough on this. The roadmap for us getting this installed for you may not be as fast as you like, but ultimately when it's installed, it will be the one-stop shop solution for you. So find a way to spill that coffee on yourself. And in doing so, the evidence shows you look much more trustworthy.
So a simple word, vulnerability. The more vulnerable we are without going too far, whilst being authentic, makes us, I'm interpreting it as more human.
Absolutely. And look, it goes back to that piece of research, people buy from people. Imagine you walk into a car yard and someone says, Mike, I've got the car for you. It's got only 10 miles on the clock. It's only 1 year old. You know, new, this would be 112,000. I'll sell it to you for 5K. This sounds so good that you convince yourself there's clearly 2 dead bodies in the boot of the car and you want to avoid it, because the minute that we feel like something is being sold as perfect, brilliant, amazing, we start to sniff it out. If we want to have success as a persuasive individual, as a salesperson, or as a leader, it's not about being perfect. It's about being human, vulnerable, and authentic.
Excellent. So I'm going to move on to kind of like the last question. And then I'm going to have, I think, some rabbit holes, David. We're going to explore some things, I think. But for our listener, let's get on to, because it leads directly onto that, which is, what 3 practical tips would you give to any salesperson about getting their mindset right when they're preparing for a sales meeting, a negotiation, or anything where the opposition, or rather the counterparty, is perceived as being tough? What would you say?
For sure. So 3 really simple takeaways. The first thing is reframe any nerves or expectation that you have as excitement. An amazing Harvard study showed how powerful this was. They got some participants to take part in an experiment that they had no idea what it would entail. They divided them into 3 groups, told one group to tell themselves over and over again, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited. Group number 2 had to tell themselves over and over, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, I'm anxious. Group number 3 had no intervention whatsoever. So these 3 groups were doing this not knowing what was happening next. Once they had done that for just a couple of minutes, they were brought into a new room and had to carry out a fate worse than death. They had to sing karaoke. They had to sing songs that they did not know the words to. And even though it was a really simple change in how they were thinking, the group that told themselves over and over again, I'm excited, they dramatically outperformed everyone else in every dimension. Why? Because our expectation, they don't predict our reality, but they do set how we show up for that reality. So for number 1, reframe any nerves as excitement. Number 2, build rapport first. Countless studies show that negotiation goes better if we show that we're interested in who this person is. We've heard for the longest time that people buy from people, but we forget that what it takes to actually connect with them. Ask real questions, respond to what's actually happening inside the room, understand who they are, and ultimately they will understand you better. It's such a predictable cliche to say that if you want to be interesting, then be interested in other people. But the evidence shows that if you want success in sales or negotiation, that really does matter. And point number 3, if you're negotiating with someone challenging, don't try to be perfect. Be a human, be authentic. That will allow you to be a trusted advisor. People are dramatically more likely to pick up the phone to someone in the future if you can crack that authenticity piece. One of my favorite quotes from politics suggested that authenticity is everything. Authenticity is key. Authenticity will get you to the top. So if you learn how to fake authenticity, you will nail it. So for me, those 3 things matter. And more than anything, they're not anecdotes. The evidence shows that if you do these 3 things, you'll sell more and negotiate better.
Brilliant. So we're about 16 minutes in. So there's about probably 5-7 minutes of the listener going, oh, so what's next? So anyone listening now, this hasn't been prepared. I haven't told David what I'm thinking, but I've written some notes down. I just want to explore, like we were in a coffee shop, having a discussion about some of the things you said. So if you're listening, don't switch off. So I want to talk about trusted advisor. There was a brilliant piece of work done by a guy called Meister back in the 90s, I think, about being the trusted advisor and how critical it is. I know you work with very big professional services firms. How does this play into, how do you train people to become a trusted advisor? It's a really difficult thing that I talk to salespeople about is, how do you become a trusted advisor, not a salesperson? What's your experience of that?
In this climate, I think that we can see a massive shift in how organizations are allowing their people to show up. Let me touch on a couple of examples. HubSpot and Salesforce. You will notice that if you look at not just their leadership team, but their wider team all across social media, they are building their personal brands. They are becoming experts and thought leaders in their own space, whether they're a sales engineer, whether they're a coder or a VP of sales. And this really does go to the heart of understanding how trusted advisorship has changed over the course of the last couple of years. I think a lot of people think that that means always being on the end of the phone, being responsive, and building a good relationship. That is true. But today we're in an attention economy. And if we want to achieve that trusted advisor status, we have to be visible. We have to be present. And by placing our thought leadership out there, in other words, our view on what makes a great sale, our view on what drives high-performing team, our own personal experiences of our best day at work, but maybe also our most challenging, placing that out there into the sphere of social media doesn't make you a cringy influencer. It makes you a trusted advisor that people feel like they know, like, and trust before they know, like, and trust you.
Because we know there is lots of evidence now. Things have definitely changed in the last 3 years in selling and negotiating, especially in the B2B environment, where exactly what you said, there is so much noise out there. And with AI tools and AI bots, we've got this whole, do we trust what it says? Do we not trust what it says? There's no human there. So what do I think about that? The research, something like 95% of the research is done now without any salesperson being involved. So when they do reach out to a salesperson, a commercial person, an advisor, they've done a whole load of work already. So When you show up in that moment, my thinking is, I'd like to just get your thoughts on this, David, is you'd better have done your homework. You better have some insights that take them beyond what they've read and that starts to build rapport, being human, being relatable, and puts you in a position of you are that person who's a specialist in their niche that can genuinely help them solve a big problem they've got.
Absolutely true. And it's easier than you think. Truthfully, 10 years ago, someone might have said, go onto the website, let's look at their about page, see if they've got any press releases. Are they hiring, growing at the moment? Any new contracts? That's what that was. But today we have to do this in a much more human way. A basic example is to go on LinkedIn. Don't just look at their last 2 posts. Skim through their last 20 posts and see what they're talking about as an individual, but pay attention to the things that they're mentioning that are not specific to their business, that tell you more about how they think, act, and behave. More than that, and here's a great hack, don't just look at what they're posting. If you go into LinkedIn, you could look at, by clicking the comments button, at what they're commenting on other people's material and content. That tells you what is really going on underneath the lid of how they think. That'll give you an insight into who they are, and you'll much better understand their personality when they finally arrive on that first discovery call.
That's an excellent tip. I always talk about commenting on their post, but what you've done is taken it a level further. Look at how they're commenting on other people's posts, because it tells you what they are as a person. Brilliant. So, reframing. Just give the listener a really simple, practical tip. I completely concur about the mindset. I was on stage in Denver, 300 people about 3 months ago. You do 150 of these a year. I probably do 4 or 5 a year, maybe 10. And it took me 2 days to get my mindset right. Really hard to get in the zone. What would you recommend to people that have to change their mindset when they're walking into a one-to-one or an audience of 300 people? Give them something practical to do.
Absolutely. If you want to stand up and be your best self on stage, there's a few things that help you do this really well. Let's first of all talk about the physiological things, because I disagree with a lot of the traditional advice that some speaker coaches suggest.
Excellent.
So the first thing that I will say is, and it sounds silly, do not be sitting down before you go on stage. Oftentimes, you're either sat backstage, you're sat in the front row, and someone's introducing you. Now, a really challenging physiological thing happens if they say, please welcome David or Mike to the stage. If that's when you're standing up, you are, for the first time, decompressing your lungs and your diaphragm. That means you will start your talk out of breath. So you have got to be standing before you go on stage, and standing for at least 5 minutes, because your blood pressure will shift, your heart rate will move and adapt. So always make sure that you're standing. Second thing is, oftentimes, it really makes a big difference. Second thing that I would say is always start loud. The first thing that you say must be loud. Now, the reason for that is, and I'm not saying coming out shouting, yay, like Balmer did back in the Microsoft days.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
But you should start loud. The reason being is, in the first couple of seconds, if you come out and just start with a, thank you, so excited to be here, there is a small chance that you might get a little frog in your throat, because remember, you haven't probably spoken for about 30 minutes because there is a speaker on stage in the previous session, then someone's introducing you. Out of politeness, you have to be quiet. Your throat can start to rest and become soft during that time. So if you go up and just say, great to be here, there's a chance that it might go like this. Great to be here, fantastic. You might get a little crackle and a little frog. That is the worst way to start a talk for 2 reasons. Number one, the audience feel like you're not speaking authoritatively. But then number 2, you start to overthink it and think that they think this is the worst thing in the world. No, it isn't. They will have forgotten it in 2 minutes. But it's inside your head and it's playing a little game with you. Now, to help that along, tip number 3 on speaking is to have the tiniest drink of water before you go on. I see so many people glugging down a bottle because they think, I'm thirsty, I don't want to get a dry mouth. I'm sorry, but taking a half bottle of water before you go on stage does not help lubricate your throat any. All it does is put wind inside your system that will come back to haunt you in a few minutes. Yeah. So you should take the tiniest amount of water, literally just enough to wet the inside of your mouth. And it should be room temperature, not cold, because that tightens up the back of the throat. So room temperature water, literally enough just to lubricate the inside of your mouth. So those are the physiological things that I see most people who don't speak often get wrong, okay? One of the other things I would say is don't over-rehearse before you get there. I know that if it's a big opportunity for you, 300 to 500 people inside the room, you care what they think. You can often want to pace around that hotel room, telling yourself over and over again, if I get this word perfect, then I will look like an expert and a professional. I really don't agree with that. An expert and a professional does not prepare every single word. They know the themes. They use their slides potentially as a rudder and a cue to move their way through it. But ultimately, if you are rehearsing and memorizing word for word, what that means is if you drop one or two words, you will lose the domino that gets you to the next point. So instead, challenge yourself to rehearse, absolutely, know the material inside out, but trust your experience and your authority that it will come out when you're on stage. It makes it much more human and much more dynamic. And one final example. Forgive me for always talking about research. I love the science.
No, it's brilliant. It's a masterclass in communication, presenting, being authentic. Carry on, David.
It's simple stuff, and it really does work. And it comes from a final piece of research called the Batman effect. Now, stick with me because we are talking about a superhero here. And some very clever psychologists tested this out, checking to see how people handle challenging, anxiety-inducing, stressful situations. And ahead of that, they got an entire group of individuals, got them to imagine different people, some from real life, some from worlds of fiction, before they went and did this challenging thing. And what they found was, if people thought of someone powerful, strong, influential, and successful, like, for instance, Batman, before they went to do something tough, it physically changed how they thought about this challenge or opportunity that was in front of them. Now, while thinking of Batman may not be everyone's thing, it is a powerful lesson in when you're looking at a challenge. Think about who you know would absolutely nail it, do it well, who you would admire, and ask yourself, how would they be feeling in this moment? What would they be thinking? What preparation would they put in? And simply taking that visualization exercise, the evidence proves dramatically increases your likelihood of it going well. So I will often, if I'm delivering a presentation, I will think of Steve Jobs and how he would cut out the fluff and give only the simple, clean stuff that people want to remember. I'll also, if I have to give a serious talk, and sometimes I've had to land some pretty tough lessons with clients who are trying to achieve high performance, I think about Obama and how he managed to land the heavy stuff with a light touch. But also, if I'm dealing with an individual, a set of audience delegates who are really there about the detail, then I think about people like, for instance, Hillary Clinton, who a lot of people used to say, was not terribly warm, not brilliantly charismatic, but boy, she had the detail. I try to think about it through the lens of how they would attack this speaking challenge. And it will really shift how you learn and prepare that material, but more importantly, how you think about it in the moments as you walk to the stage.
Brilliant. Last couple of minutes. I want to spare last minute for a roundup. But one more thing, which is, we've all sat in rooms in conferences, and I do this regularly when I speak. So I say to people, okay, fine, you've had a morning with 4 speakers, and I'm now the 3 or 4 o'clock slot in the afternoon. You've had some workshops. Just tell me, what did you learn in the morning? Just give me 5 things that you learned. There'll be silence. I say, okay, how about 3 things you learned? Might get a couple of people. How about 1 thing you learned? Most people have got 1 thing. Out of 4 hours of content, those people that prepared really, really well with loads of great material, people have remembered 1 thing. How do you get over that challenge? As a presenter, as a speaker, how do you get your messages landed?
Do you know, I have a great hack for this, and it's come from 15 years of experience of being in exactly that situation. I remember sitting in the audience, getting to the end of a 2-day event and realizing I'm not entirely sure what I can apply or how I can apply it. Here is how I do this as someone who delivers 150 talks a year and needs to make sure that my audience remember the information. I give them moments in the talk to apply the takeaway. So here's a good example. If, let's say, I'm talking about the psychology of persuasion or influence, if I have shared a piece of science that they can apply and employ in their roles, the minute that I've done that, when their appetite is whet and they think, gosh, I haven't heard that before, that really does sound like a good one. Now, the truth is, I have about 8 or 9 different moments like that in my talks. If I don't give them a moment to reflect, that material will not stick. So what I do is, after that moment of learning, I give them 60 seconds. I say, I want you to talk to the person to your left or to your right. I want you to think about how you could apply and employ this in the next 30 days. Now, I'm not going to challenge you with this. And for the most part, I'm not going to hold you accountable. Ultimately, your job is to hold yourself accountable and to accept that this should not have been an email. You should have been here in person. So how are you going to apply and employ it? Agree, disagree. And then this is the kicker. I say you've got 60 seconds. Your time starts now. Start talking to the person closest to you who looks least intelligent. Off you go. And what you'll find
what was that last bit again?
I say start your conversation with the person around you who looks least intelligent. Now, here's what happens. The first thing is that they will instantly laugh for about 5 to 10 seconds. The second thing is they'll get to the conversation. And what it does, it creates a moment for them to step out of the talk and really think about how they're going to apply and employ it. My job is to make sure that my clients actually do the stuff that I tell them to do. For many years, I presented it well. It was fun, engaging, interactive, full of science, but it wasn't actually sticky. These days, if you give them those 30 to 60 second moments right in the middle of your talk to apply and employ it, it is like rocket fuel. It's like hiding extra vegetables in the lasagna. They're getting way more nutrition than they realize.
And how many of those would you put into a 60-minute kind of like session? A couple?
Oh, for 60 minutes, I do that 3 to 5 times, depending on what the lessons are, 3 to 5 times. One little hack, though, that makes it work really well. Make sure you've got music as a bed to go underneath that. Otherwise, it feels a little bit like you're in church and someone is waiting to shake someone's hand. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. So you do need a little bit of music, but you can embed that in your PowerPoint or give it to the tech team and say your 60 seconds starts now. Put a bit of Wheatfield Saturday Night on. You'd be surprised how they start to talk.
Or a bit of Miles Davis in my case.
Absolutely. Go for it.
David, genuinely, thoroughly enjoyable, brilliantly prepared, as I knew you would be. Great messages. Just give people just 2 or 3 takeaways. Salespeople that are listening, thinking about negotiating or just like engaging with clients, or they're being asked to present at a conference. What are the kind of 3 messages to take away?
You know, for me, if you're pitching to a client or if you're presenting to a conference, number 1, be intentional about your mindset. Don't leave it for someone else, somewhere else. You might have a colleague that says that, I pitched to them a few years ago. It wasn't for them. They're already pretty heavily tied to the incumbent. If you have that, that will set your expectation. So be intentional about it. Don't let it be set by someone else, somewhere else. The second thing is make sure that you're leaning into the science of persuasion and influence. Build that rapport at the beginning. If you do, it will skyrocket your likelihood of getting results. And number 3, frankly, back yourself. Give yourself the time to show up and be successful for yourself. If you do that, it'll change everything.
David, it's been amazing. Thank you. 2 things. Where can people find out more about you and how do they buy your services?
Really easy. If you want to learn this stuff every day, I post brand new content on LinkedIn. Search for David Meade, keynote speaker on LinkedIn. There's tons of videos, cheat sheets, infographics, takeaways. They're all immediately applicable and they get downloaded by about 500,000 people every month. So go and check those out. They really are science-backed and I put an absolute boatload of time and energy. I think people think that ChatGPT is doing it. I wish ChatGPT could do it because I can assure you I'm doing it and then someone else is making it look pretty. So come and join me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you all. And maybe I'll catch you all at a conference delivering a keynote sometime soon.
Brilliant. David, it's been amazing. Thank you ever so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.